to The Road Reflected with Nicole Wakeland. Automotive from the lighter side. That means cars, but also cookies, coffee, and pie. Up first, what's Nicole behind the wheel of this week?
Okay, I'm not even talking about what I'm behind the wheel of this week because I have a guest on the show that I am super duper super excited about that is technically not even an automotive guest. I have Danielle Bennett, or do you just go by Diva Q? Which is it mostly?
Mostly Diva Q.
Okay, I have Diva Q, who is, I'm going to write down my notes that I have, world champion barbecue pitmaster, best-selling author, and then I added all-around amazing person. And I met her because she was actually cooking at an event. Do you remember this, where I met you, Diva?
I do. It was a great event. It wasn't just a good event. It was a great event. We were in Comfort Springs, Texas. Mm-hmm. And I was actually there to represent Traeger Grills with the ultimate launch. It was probably one of my most fun events that I have done in the last 5 years because I enjoyed it so much with my history. I am a massive Ford fan, and it was for the launch of the Ford F-150 Lightning.
Yes. And so what they had, for anybody who doesn't know, the F-150 Lightning is the electric version of the F-150. So when it first, it's still a big deal, but when it first came out, especially, it was sort of like, oh my God, they made a truck into an EV. They did it, guys, because it was almost like the holy grail. Like, they can never do this to a truck. You can do it to a little sedan. You can do it to an SUV, but they did it. And why they had, I think the tie-in for you was that Traegers are not, they're electric. You plug them in to use them.
Yeah, it's one of the great things. Yeah. It's an all-electric grill, and it was a perfect tie-in to the Lightning.
Right? So they had a whole bunch of Traegers there. They had them plugged in. They're cooking, and you were cooking lunch. The folks at Ford didn't bother to say who you were, though. So in my head, I'm thinking, oh, here's the woman who's cooking lunch for us. I'm going to go get some barbecue. And I sit down and I have my nice little tiny reasonable portion of food. And I was like, oh my God, this is really good. I'm going back to get an unreasonable portion of food. And I went back up and I said to you, like you were just like random Joe, oh my gosh, you're really good at this. Your food is really, really good. And you tipped your head down so I could see your hat. And you're like, it's what I do. And I go back and Google Diva Q, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this woman actually is like world renowned, and they haven't said anything. So I had no idea. Yeah.
That's very, very, very kind of you. You know, it was just a lot of fun. I was there for 3 days on site, and we had the team from Traeger Culinary, and we put out some epic barbecue. And the coolest thing is that we ran 5 Traeger grills off of the F-150 Lightning. Plus, they were running the popcorn machine, the basketball machine, the sound system, lighting, and we ran it. That was one of the coolest things for me. And being the fact that I've owned 5 Ford trucks in a row,
wow.
For me to go out and work with Ford, and I was actually in Michigan for the launch. I went to the Super Bowl for the F-150 Lightning booth. I did, I'm a genuine, authentic Ford driver. Always have driven Fords. My dad drove Ford trucks.
So it's like in the family. So your dad was a Ford guy, so you're a Ford guy.
Yeah. So what happened was my very first truck that I owned was I bought my dad's XLT flare side Ranger. And that was this tiny little truck he bought to tow his little fishing boat down to Florida and back to Canada because he was a snowbird. And that was actually my very first Ford truck. And then from there, I just kept buying F-150s until my most recent, and her name is Serena, and she is in my driveway. And that is my most beloved vehicle of all time. It was my dream vehicle. So I had always wanted, I drove, just great Ford F-150s for years, hauled trailers with them all over the country, doing barbecue contests from one side of the US to another, did an entire 3-year show with the Travel Channel, drove my F-150, like literally crisscrossed the country 3 times. And then I said, I want to upgrade, of course. And I'd always wanted an XLT F250 XLT Platinum.
Is that what Serena is?
That's what she is, and she is gorgeous and beautiful. And and she's got a little lift, not a redneck lift. I always like to say
Not
that
a redneck lift.
she's just got a little lift, not a Florida redneck lift. So she's a little bit lifted,
just a little, just enough,
just enough. And I only drive black vehicles, so she's all chromed out, and she's got every bell and whistle, and she's just stunning.
So you were crisscrossing the U.S. Was it a Super Duty? Was it like an F-250 or was it a 150 when you were going back and forth?
It was actually just a regular 150,
really?
And I towed the first of two barbecue competition trailers, and the weight load was just under 8,000. Okay. And then I moved up to a bigger trailer, and that's the trailer I currently have, and she's 11.5, so a little bit more weight. And I remember the very first time I towed that trailer with the F-250.
Was it scary?
No, but I should have gotten a ticket because I was on Highway 4. No, I was in North Carolina. Sorry, because I picked up the trailer in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I was driving it back to Canada. And I looked down at one point, and I was going 90 plus miles an hour, and I couldn't feel the trailer because I was just enjoying the truck. So like literally, you pop on a little music, you get singing your country songs, you have your one person little karaoke program, and you're going down the highway. And I was driving back to Canada at the time, and I literally looked down and went, "Oh, you better slow down, woman. You're going to get yourself in jail going this speed."
So it was so easy to drive, even though you're towing this huge trailer. You're like just like zoned out, and suddenly you're speeding like a crazy woman down the highway.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, right there. And the funny thing is that I'm turning 50 this year, and I'm very proud to say that in 50 years, I have never been given a speeding ticket.
You've just jinxed yourself. We're going to hit stop on recording. You're going to go to the grocery store, and you're going to get a ticket because you're going 1 mile over the speed limit. You've totally jinxed yourself.
Well, I'd like to say I've never been given a speeding ticket. I was actually sent one once from a rental. From a rental. I was teaching up in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and I was teaching some barbecue classes. And a couple of weeks later, I got home, of course, and I get a letter from National Rentals. And it was a ticket because I was going 4 miles over.
4? I didn't even really think they did that. I always kind of thought you had to go like 5 before the police would even remotely pay attention to you. I always thought at 4 I was safe.
And I honestly thought, I looked at this and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, are you kidding me? And
4
that was
miles.
One of those, it was one of those speed trap cameras. And that's, but other than that, I've never been pulled over, never been given a ticket, yeah.
I've gotten a few, but it's been a long time. So hopefully I don't get one when I go to the grocery store now too. So you're towing these. So you have Serena, but are you going to, now you're not, do you drive around the US towing stuff a lot as much as you like used to? Cause I've seen you traveling to like Australia to do barbecue stuff and all over the place. Are you driving as much as you once were? Or is it more flying places and doing stuff?
Now, the last, just prior to COVID, I actually stopped competing. I don't do any more competitions. I'm not against it. I just really enjoy this aspect of my career where I get to travel all over the world. And I've been doing this for a lot of years. I've taught over 20,000 students now, barbecue. Wow. And that's over the course of the last 17 years. And one of the things is that, with your career kind of changes, it metamorphosizes. And so I got to the point of my competition barbecue career where I was really happy with everything that I had achieved. I got all the trophies I really wanted. Like I had a bucket list of barbecue trophies that I wanted. Jack Daniel's World Championship of Pork and World Championship of Grilling, dessert, a few other things. And then the American Royal, which is the largest barbecue contest in the world, winning, the American Royal sausage, potato, so I've got all these individual world championship categories, world champion of barbecue in bacon and a few other things and desserts and things like that. And I kept looking at my bucket list. And then the one last thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to be, kind of get the last one, which was be the Houston Livestock and Rodeo. And I went out there with a team and we came, and we got a top 10 finish. And so that was, for me, it was kind of like the end of my, I guess, barbecue award championship. And the thing for me is that as I get older, I know that I want to travel more independently for my own satisfaction, not because I have to travel for work, but also because I want to travel because I love to travel around and see different things. I love to learn about food and cooking, and of course, barbecue and grilling everywhere in the world. And it's a personal thing now. So the money that I would have spent on competitions, which is, $1,000 to $2,000 a weekend.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a
Isn't
really
that
expensive
expensive?
one.
Woo.
Yeah. Now I spend it more on, okay, well, I'm going to go and take, 6 cruises this year, or I'm going to go and I'm going to travel here. And, like this year, in a couple of weeks, I'm off to go teach again. I'm off to Dubai and South Africa, and I'm going to go back to Israel. And so
my gosh, you're all over.
right, because, well, and the thing is that I really love my clients. I get to represent them well all over the world, and connecting people with food and bringing people together through great tasting barbecue and great tasting grilling is literally what I love to do more than anything in the world. Bringing people together to eat and eat really well and eat really good food is just my happy place. And so like the Ford F-150 Lightning event, that's the type I love those types of events. I love interconnecting with people. That
was so fun, because that literally is how our friendship became a friendship. It was like, it started at that F-150 Lightning. Then I'll fess up, I stalked you online, and now we are friends because I was watching all the stuff. I got your book. I'm like, oh my gosh, this woman, she knows what she's doing. So that's that was a great connection. That was a really fun part of that event. And I love that you have a big truck. You like the Lightning. Would you consider getting an electric truck? You would. So you would maybe get a Lightning.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things is, it's so funny. Mike Levine, who was there, who I respect greatly, and Emma and all them, and Jay, and I got to meet so many of the Ford team.
It's a great crew.
And I'm going to be perfectly honest, Nicole. I was cynical. I'm not going to lie, because I was very considering how much I've hauled all over the country. Okay. Right. And we're not talking about a couple of miles. We're talking about seriously crossing the United States from one side to the other in my trucks, hauling stuff multiples of times. This is not just like, we're not just going to the grocery store. We're not just going to the beach. I'm talking hauling thousands and thousands of miles in my F-150. And I literally, and I read all the specs on the Lightning, and I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah, okay. So this is just like a grocery truck. Like literally, I'm thinking, so this is a Target run truck.
Because that was everyone's concern.
This is a Target run truck. Like, I'm going to go to Target. I'm going to go to Target and get
everybody's thing was, it's like, well, it's a great truck and you can plug it in and that's cool. And you can say you're driving an EV and it's a truck, and that's even cooler. But you can't really drive anywhere with this, and you can't really tow anything with this. And this is really just, like you said, it's a grocery getter truck. But you, who are not necessarily looking for a grocery getter truck, you would feel comfortable giving this a go, because that's a big deal.
So one of the coolest things that Mike enabled me to do was because the Comfort Springs event in Texas was set up with a whole bunch of Lightnings, okay? And so they had one that had a horse trailer to be hauled. They had one that had a fishing boat to be trawled. They had one that was, a work trailer. They had all these, so, and we were in, the country, as you know, so there was an off-road program. There was an on-highway program. There was all these opportunities. And Mike said, hey, Danielle, do you want to go out? Yeah, I do. The most unsettling thing for me was getting in the truck, and it was eerily quiet.
Yes.
I think that's a bit of a learning curve, because I remember closing the door, and here, like, they just gave me a truck to go off, and he goes, Danielle, go wherever you want. Go ahead. And I remember sitting there going, is it on? Is it on? Is it on? Like, I'm like,
that is
where's that rumble?
Thing.
Where's that?
Well, and the thing is, like any vehicle, you're used to hearing some kind of engine, right? But especially in a truck. Trucks are not quiet, little subdued little things. And some of them, like, I happen to, oddly enough, I have a Ford Raptor in my driveway right now. So like, you turn it on and they hear it get turned on the next town over. Like, it's so loud. So especially with a truck, you're used to sound. So to turn on the Lightning, and it's just like, you do that, you're like, wait, did I do that right? Like, it's so quiet.
It's so quiet. And, I remember, because I drive, of course, my truck's diesel, right? There is a very pronounced sound to my truck. They know when it's coming down the road. And I'm okay with that. But the coolest thing is that I took it on all these courses, and I did, put it through its paces genuinely. I wasn't there to write about them. I was there as as a representative of Traeger Grills, but I'm also there as a truck consumer, as an automotive consumer at that point. Nobody's paying me to write anything nice about Ford. I'm not sponsored by them. I am not endorsed by them. If you're listening, Ford, we need to talk for the record, okay? We're talking like a genuine love for them. It is an absolute genuine love for the capacity that I've had, the success I've had in driving these vehicles, and the necessities that I've had in regards to having a safe vehicle wherever I go. And even to this day, I love how you say, I travel all over. I'm in SLC later this week. I'm here, I'm there, I'm in Australia, New Zealand, wherever I am in the world, whatever states I'm in or up in Canada teaching or whatnot. One of my number one requests is when I go to national and I'm in that executive line because I rent a lot of vehicles. And my number one request is always a truck.
Really?
And they try to upgrade me to some fancy BMW or an Audi. I'm like, do you have an F-150? Do you have an Expedition? Do you have a truck? Because I am the most comfortable. And it's because it looks on these rental people's faces is always hilarious. They're like, you just want a truck? Yeah,
That's
you got a basic F-150 sitting around here somewhere. Do you have an Expedition? I mean, if I have to take a flex, I will. But a little height never hurt anybody.
Right.
Because it's a genuine love. So when I took the F-150 Lightning out and I put it through its paces, I was gobsmacked.
Yeah.
And I mean, truly shocked at the towing and haul capacity. I mean this from a very beloved, genuine point of view that I was stunned.
Yeah.
How incredible it was. Not to mention the front, not to mention, the electronics and the display panel and all the bells and whistles. But
Right.
I am talking strictly from a towing capacity, something I've done for years, and I just was floored that this F-150, which I literally did go into being very cynical, and I got in and I went, oh my good gravy, this is amazing. And I'm like, this is not what I expected.
Yeah.
It was not what I expected. And I was thoroughly impressed. So yeah, actually the F-150 Lightning is on my list. The Raptor's on my list next. And Expedition Max is on my list.
I think it's funny that the Lightning and the Raptor are both on your list because in terms of efficiency, you have gone with exact opposite, and you couldn't go further apart if you tried. Let me get the least fuel efficient truck that Ford makes, and then get one that's an EV. Both of those are on my list. Like the cross shop there, really.
Well, I love, the Raptor's a sexy truck. Okay.
It is so much fun to drive. It is absolutely, but it's ridiculous. I think it's about 78 grand and it's 450 horsepower. You just feel like you're driving a tank. I do have to admit, I drove it. I had to go into the city. I had to go into Boston, and the thought of going through the narrow streets of Boston, I was like, yeah, so I'm not taking the press car. I'm going to take my own car today because it is it's a little large when you get into a city, but outside, like here in New Hampshire, where it's a lot more rural, it's have at it. It is super fun.
Well, and the thing is I love the presence of my F-250 as well. I love the presence of that.
Yes.
And I think that's probably where my affinity for the Raptor is coming from.
Presence, it's you come, you drive up and I swear people just get out of your way. I don't know whether they think I'm going to hit them because I can't see them, or if they're just that I should move. A giant tank is coming through. But yeah, although, and when I park into a parking space, I can't quite get the right turning radius. So I've been picking parking spaces where there's two, because then when I'm over the line, I'm not side swiping another car. Ford, you're going to get your Raptor back in one piece. And I'm like, oh no, I'm not. There was one spot. I'm like, oh heck no, both those people are on the yellow line on their sides. There's no way I'm wedging this truck in there.
Well, and funny you should mention parking, because I have driven the F-250 now for 4 years.
Which is big. Yeah, the 250 is big.
She's big. She's real big. Yeah. And the thing is, I always get compliments for it because she's just gorgeous. She really is. And I literally, that truck is like an extension of me. That was my dream. Everybody else can keep their Lamborghinis, their Ferraris, everything else. I drive my dream vehicle.
That's good.
The only other vehicle that I've ever wanted is a Range Rover, and I don't like the bodies now. And so if I did,
square, they're very boxy. Some of they've gotten, yeah.
And I don't like the body. And then the only car that I've ever been tempted by, and you may laugh, is a V12 XJS Jaguar Sovereign from 1992 to 94. I love that body.
That is like the most, I thought you were just going to say like a Jaguar. So she's like specific year, make, model. This is exactly what I want. Or I don't want your car. That's not a bad one. Why that one though? Why did that?
I got to drive one. I had an ex-boyfriend many years ago, and he had one.
You like the car better than the boyfriend? Is that what's happened
absolutely.
here?
Absolutely. Without a doubt, love the car more than the boyfriend by far. And it was such an elegant vehicle to drive. And because it was, you remember, the V12s were a very specific amount of years and where they were made as well. And so one of the key things for me, it's, I like power in my vehicles. I really do. I don't like wussy vehicles. You'll never see me driving some tiny little, I once waited in South Carolina. I was teaching in South Carolina. I once waited at National Car Rental for an hour and a half until another vehicle came back because I will not drive a wussy car.
Do you remember what kind of wimpy car they were offering to give you?
It was a Hyundai something or other.
Okay. Something or other. It made such an impression. It's just a Hyundai something or other. You don't even.
It was something. It was tiny, and I looked at the guy and went, "I'll just sit here with my book, thanks."
Yeah, I'll wait. I'll wait for something cooler.
I'll wait.
So I have to ask you your opinion on something because this has caused some controversy about the Ford Super Duties. What they have right now, they added a new feature, and people are arguing about this feature. So I need to have your opinion. Okay. So the tail lamps. When you load it up, you can have there's these onboard scales that tell you how much you've loaded it with. So you can I'm at my because you don't want to overload your truck despite what people say because you hurt your truck. And even if it does it, you drive away overloaded today, eventually your truck is going to get mad at you and you're going to hurt your truck. So you can see it on the screen inside, but they now have these tail lamps on the back that as you load it up, like if you're putting stuff in the bed, it's like a little scale, blip, 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 and you can see when you're getting close. So like if you're loading in bags that are measured, fine, everyone can do math. But if you're loading in random, you've got a bag of this, you've got tools, you've got barbecue stuff, whatever you're putting in there. And so it lets you know. And even if you sat down in it, it includes that in the weight because it's all the weight that's in the truck, right? So it can technically go over from your own weight, which I'm like, that's like the best, like, are you telling me to go on a diet? But still, the fact that it shows you in the tail lamps, I have guys that are arguing, saying that this is horrible, that if you use a feature like this is for people who are dumb and don't know how to drive a truck. I think it sounds cool. I don't tow and haul a payload that much. Do you think it's a good feature? Would that be helpful? What do you think?
Well, I'm just speaking from family experience. My parents have both passed on now, but I will tell you this true story. My mother once overloaded my dad's F-150 she was buying paper stones.
Okay.
And she overloaded the payload on the truck so much so that he had to go get repairs. No joke.
See? So that's to the point.
The pallet fit on the back, no problem. They were just a load of paper stones. She didn't connect the dots about the fact that it was the paper stones plus the bags, there were some concrete bags in there and some other things. So the additives of the additional weight really hurt his truck, and he ended up taking it to Parry Sound Ford up in Ontario to get realignment and a few other things. For me personally, I understand payloads, and I think that this is still a great value added feature. Personally, I think that we often, underweight things. And it is always better to be on the side of caution. These, vehicles are expensive. One of the things is, I've got $100,000 truck in my driveway, I don't want to put, anything on her that she's not going to be able to handle. Yeah. And I think that that's a real, personally, I don't have any issues with it. I think it's a good idea. I think that we have to sometimes set our egos aside for the betterment of the vehicle.
Hey, wait, did we just drive by a bakery? No, I've never in my life driven by a bakery, but I wanted to transition this because we can talk about any food you want, Diva, but I feel like we have to just full on discuss barbecue because that's kind of your thing.
Just kind of.
Just kind of.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
It's a little bit. You're a little bit of the barbecue. So I got to tell you, you've been helping my husband become a better barbecuer. In fact, yesterday he made a brisket, came out lovely. He made it on a Traeger. We bought one because of you in that Ford F-150 program. So, marketing and sponsorship and ambassadorship all works. So what, if you had to think, like people love to barbecue, right? What would you tell people who are trying to learn about barbecue? If you had to give like a tip, like how do you get better at learning how to do that stuff?
I think one of the key things that people are really impatient these days. We want instant results from everything, whether it's news or food or takeout or, everything. And I think one of the greatest things about barbecue is that it teaches you patience and maybe some other cocktail making skills as well. Because one of the key things I'll always say to people is like, when is it going to be done? And you can give a general estimate, but barbecue sometimes has a life of its own. So if the proteins are denaturing, which means that they're breaking down, they're becoming more tender, the cell structure is unraveling. One of the key things is that sometimes barbecue takes a little bit longer than you originally thought. So I think one of the key things that number one, have patience. Have patience, learn some cocktail recipes. So like if things are not going according to plan, have a couple appetizers, and you've got friends coming over.
So what's your favorite cocktail? If it's taking longer than it should, you have to pick one cocktail, and you have to make that. What's your one cocktail you're going to make?
Whiskey or bourbon neat.
Oh, okay. So she's just like, no, straight up, forget it. If I'm sitting here waiting,
give me the bottle.
It's just okay. Acceptable answer. I'll take that one.
And so that's on the brown liquor side, and then the other side would be I'm a huge fan of Smithwick's, which is an Irish red ale. So I like a good Smithwick's. I like citrus beers. So maybe I'll grab a citrus beer. But yeah, Smithwick's beer or straight whiskey. I mean, I do like gin. I like other things, but that's typically my go-to.
Whiskey is my go-to, so I have no complaints with that. I love whiskey. We did this whiskey sample thing once, and it had all these. It looked like test tube vials, but it was like 30 different kinds of whiskey. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, I know what I like now. So fun.
This enabled you to choose. Like I have a collection of whiskey that's about 300 bottles now, and
are you kidding? 300 bottles?
Yeah, I'm a big whiskey and bourbon fan. I love trying different wines. I love just like you said. I love doing the tastings. I was just in Ireland and Scotland, and I took my son with me. I'm like, mommy just needs to take a sip of 5. I don't need an ounce of each, but mommy needs to try these. And he's like, really, mom? I'm just sitting here with my Coke, and you're going to do this. I'm
you're going to take all these little sips of whiskey.
Yeah. The other thing about barbecue, I think the other thing that I would really recommend people stop doing is, it goes with the patience. But I think the number one lesson, once you get a great grill, of course, I'm going to endorse Traeger grills, been with them forever. But I think the other thing that is really essential, once you get a great grill, it is to understand that you should be cooking things via temperature versus time. And that to me is 2 products. That's a meter block, which is like a digital instant read thermometer, like a ThermaPen, plus an insert thermometer like the meter. And one of the key things that allows you to do is it allows you to monitor the temperature. It allows you to figure out what's going on with the meat itself. Or even like today, I'm making some focaccia on the grill, and I'll do some breads later on this week. I use digital thermometers for my breads to make sure they come up to the right temperature. I like perfectly cooked potatoes. So I even use digital thermometers in my potatoes when I'm doing a big, like a jacket potato or a baked potato. When I make candy, because I don't just cook barbecue. I mean, I cook everything. It's kind of my life.
And she really does. If you follow her on social media, like you think, oh, I'm going to see barbecue. You're like, wait, is she making like breakfast on there? What is that bread? Like the number of things. And then I look, I'm like, can I make all this stuff? I haven't tried anything but meat on the Traeger yet, but I keep saying one of these days I'm going to try a non-meat product just because you cook everything on there.
I do. Like last night I was bored, and I'm one of those people that doesn't like traditional TV. So I am not a TV centric kind of person. And so when I have time off, I was in my kitchen right here last night. And what was I baking? I baked, I don't know, a whole bunch of mini banana loaves on the grill.
I saw those. You had those on social media too. I really do stalk her. I'm like, oh, she made banana bread. Those look really good.
But I do things, and even like yesterday, because, whether it's the weekend or a weekday, a lot of times what I try to do is to try to find a way to infuse smoke or wood fire goodness onto whatever I'm making. So I was actually making a gin and I made a gin and tonic cocktail last night. And one of the things that I added to it just to write a new recipe was a smoked hibiscus syrup. Ooh. And so I'm always trying to find different ways to just infuse wood fire goodness and grilling to whatever it is I'm doing. And that's like every day for me. Like that's not just, just because I have to do a post. That's generally, I love those flavor profiles. I enjoy them. And I think that teaching people to not just do meat and to do all of the other things. Like I make smoked, ice cubes, and I make really cool, different infusions with whipped cream.
Do you put smoked ice cubes like in a cocktail then? So it gives it a smoky flavor? Is that?
Yeah. And so it's an easy way. It's an easy way to add a little smoky component as it melts. It gets a little smokier. Even with some of, we're coming up to, in the next couple of months, we've got Thanksgiving coming up and then the holidays. So even things like a pumpkin cheesecake, like for Thanksgiving. So I may smoke the cream to make a smoked whipped cream, or I may smoke the walnuts or the pecans or any of those things, or caramelize them on the grill just to add another layer of flavor. So, yes, I can absolutely throw down with meat. Oh my goodness. I am a purebred carnivore for sure, but I love the other components as well.
So the last question I have for you, if you had to pick one meat, it has to be meat that's going to be the thing that you're going to grill. Your favorite thing to barbecue, what is it?
I'd say for grilling, it would be a hanger steak.
Okay.
For barbecue, it would still probably be a brisket. Yeah.
A brisket.
Brisket. I'm a red meat. I mean, I love pork, and I think it's still very magical to watch a pulled pork shred apart. I think that's one of the most magical barbecue moments there is. But I love a great brisket, a really good salt and pepper Dalmatian brisket, like Texas style. And I truly love my go-to steak is a hanger steak. So I love a hot and fast grilled hanger steak, a little bit of chimichurri, maybe some goodness. That's it. Pretty simple.
That's awesome. Danielle, Diva, I'm just going to call you Diva or Diva Q? Diva Q. Thank you so much for coming on the show and talking to me. It's been wonderful chatting with you. I'm not going to lie. We chatted for like 20 minutes before this podcast, and we'll probably chat another 20 more. But this is it for the podcast. So thank you so much. It was wonderful to have you here.
Anytime.
Thanks for listening to The Road Reflected. To follow more of Nicole Wakeland's adventures, head on over to NicoleWakeland.com. There you'll find links to her social media from TikTok to Twitter, as well as her work across a wide range of media outlets. Until next time, keep it shiny side up.